They don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hi guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my lovely and talented co-host, Melissa.
Hi JD, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited. This is going to be a great show. So if you get the opportunity to share this with somebody else in the real estate community, make sure you're pushing this out. We're super excited to bring you guys the leader of the sub-2 community. Everybody's talking about him. All of our masterminds, our meetups, our friends list, Pace Morby. Thank you so much, Pace, for taking the time out of your day to come chat with us.
Yeah, I couldn't wait. I saw it on my calendar and I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Pace, for any of our audience that has been living under a rock for the last 10 years in real estate and maybe don't know who you are or where you come from, could you just give us a brief run through of where you started, where you're at now? And then I really hope we can dive into the sub-2 stuff.
Absolutely. My name is Pace Morby. Come from a family of 12 kids. I'm third in line. Mom and dad still together. So I had a pretty amazing leg up with a traditional household that taught me hard work ethic and actually to obsessed over hard work. I came home from a mission. I served a mission in South Korea. I speak Korean, which is a weird thing about me. And immediately jumped into construction, which is why did I jump into construction? Because I learned from my parents. My dad was in construction. Did that for a very long time, touched a lot of houses. I learned how to trade time for money. And I learned from my dad to just keep working hard until the day you die, basically. And I thought about getting started in real estate for 7 years. I would tell myself, I'm going to get started. 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 And I overthought it. I didn't have the help. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have a community of people to help me out until a lady that was my customer. I was actually flipping a house for her. She was a fix and flipper and a buy and hold investor. She changed everything in my mindset and forced me to get started, literally forced me to get started, and started doing deals roughly 9 years ago. And not knowing how to comp, not knowing what ARV meant, not knowing how to fill out a contract, how to negotiate, not knowing any of those things. And today we have 2,000 doors in our portfolio, roughly $500 million in assets under management. And the majority of that is without investors and without partners.
That's crazy awesome.
It's crazy. And the reason for that, and I hope we have some time to get into it. The reason for that rapid growth is because of creative finance, which means I'm not using credit. I'm not using tax history, tax returns, job history. I'm not using my bank records. I'm not using any of my own cash. I'm not using any of that stuff, and I can gobble up properties. This week alone, we're closing on $30 million in real estate that will go into our portfolio, a $7 million RV park that's already turnkey and cash flowing net $16,000 a month that was bought on seller finance, a $20 million apartment building that we bought on seller finance as well in Tucson that will net us about 40 grand a month right on day one. These types of assets are out there, even in an economy where the interest rates are going up. My team never talks about interest rates. We don't care about interest rates. We go directly to the seller or to agents that understand creative finance and gobble up a lot of real estate. Now, before we get started, I want to point out creative finance is not just good for buy and holding. Creative finance is great for real estate agents, and it's amazing for wholesalers. In fact, I've made more money wholesaling creative finance deals than I ever did wholesaling cash deals, paying way more money to the seller, giving them a major win. I make more money on my assignments, even paying more money than a cash wholesaler would. So creative finance is the silver bullet to real estate, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, we definitely agree with you. Obviously, you're kind of an expert in this space. And when we're learning about real estate, and what you had mentioned before we started the podcast, is from somebody who doesn't know how to do a creative finance deal, it can seem extremely overwhelming, super complicated, and difficult. Do you have any words of wisdom that you could share with our guys who are just getting started in this creative spot?
I have a rebuttal to that. Okay. I think that traditional real estate, the real estate that we all know and understand with real estate agents and banks and hard money lenders, all these things, is way more complicated than creative finance ever can be. And why is that? Well, first and foremost, I own a title company. We're in 43 states. I can tell you the most challenging transactions are the ones that involve multiple real estate agents. Sorry, guys that are real estate agents, but you guys make transactions very challenging. The worst part is that you have appraisers and inspectors. You have banks that are going through. I mean, as real estate agents, you know what your borrowers are going through with your lenders. Even though you have a preferred lender, your preferred lender is peppering your borrower every week for new information and dragging on what should be a 30-day closing to a 62-day closing. We don't have any of that in creative finance. Zero, literally zero. No banks are involved. No appraisers are involved. No inspections if you don't want them. No surveys are needed. None of that is needed. There is literally 7 less people involved in a creative finance transaction as a traditional piece of real estate transaction. So when people say it's more complicated, I'm like, where did you get that information? It is way more simple. Now, why do people immediately think it's challenging? Well, because it's something they don't know. It's the same way I felt about when I told myself for 7 years that I was going to get started in real estate. I didn't even know what creative finance was. So what I was thinking in my mind was like, I got to save up my money. I got to get good credit. I got to get good job history and go get pre-qualified to do all these things. I didn't once think real estate was hard because of creative finance. I thought real estate was hard because of the way everybody else is currently doing it today. But when I did my first transaction in wholesale and fixing and flipping, I realized that it was actually very simple. Then when I did my first creative finance deal, I go, this is going to be really hard. And I walk out of that and I go, that was easier than any cash deal I've ever done. And you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would fight with me against that.
Yeah, it makes sense when and I guess it's a lack of education that makes everything seem mysterious, right?
Right.
Okay, so now the key to a deal lies within a seller's motivation. And one of the questions that we get asked at our investor meetups and really with anybody that we're dealing with is why on earth would somebody sell on sub 2? I know why I want to buy on sub 2. That's great. Interest rates 8%. We can get it for 2.5%. Okay, great. But why would somebody want to sell via sub 2 or any kind of creative finance?
It's interesting to me because when I first got into like wholesaling, right, and I got into traditional real estate, you look at like people that are doing the BRRRR strategy to do buy and hold. These guys got to buy real estate at like 60, 50, and 70 cents on the dollar max. So what are you really doing? You're asking a homeowner or an agent to negotiate with a homeowner to get them down to 50 cents of their potential ARV. Mm-hmm. Yet they still do it. Yet there are deals out there at 50 cents, 60 cents on the dollar because the seller has motivation. Yet I don't see as many people asking, why would a seller sell to you at 50, 60 cents on the dollar? Well, because they have a hoarder home, they have a divorce going on, they have a whatever going on, et cetera, right? We all know these things. But then the second you bring up creative finance, people go, why would they do that? I'm like, well, first and foremost, the number one reason why anybody would sell to you on creative finance is because they get paid way more money than in a traditional setting. Way more money. Whether it's a single family home, a piece of dirt, an RV park, multifamily, does not matter. They get paid more money. The second reason I see sellers, if we want to talk specifically about subject 2, the number one reason why people in subject 2 will sell is because they have a lack of equity. So think about this. And by the way, people that are brand new, they go, oh, well, the news said that there's never been more equity ever in the history of whatever. I'm like, okay, but there's also never been more people on the planet than there were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The amount of equity lacking homes is so abundant that the majority of expired listings today come from an agent's inability to sell a property due to the fact of its lack of equity.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, Maricopa County, where I'm at, Phoenix, Arizona, that's my backyard. We have 980 expired listings just in the last 2 weeks. So isn't that crazy to think about? 980 agents should have gone to those sellers and said, look, might not be your first option. Obviously you want to sell and you want to, forget about this house ever existed, but you really don't have a lot of equity. You bought with an FHA loan or a VA loan in 2022. You put no money down. Now the market's compressed a little bit. And, even if you owe 400 and we sell for 400, or even think about this, if they sell for $400,000 hypothetically, but the homeowner only owes 370. Do you know how many real estate agents think that homeowner has $30,000 in equity?
More than should.
More than should. That is not equity. Okay. Equity is what I have in my pocket after all my expenses of selling the house. That homeowner that is selling for 400 but owes 370 to Wells Fargo actually has a negative $10,000 equity yield. And so they walk out of that deal having to write a check for $10,000, but the agent didn't tell them that because the agent didn't know, right? So I'm not bashing agents. I'm trying to wake some of these agents up by saying, guys, it's not your fault that they didn't teach this in real estate school, right? It's the same thing with being an attorney or anything else. You don't learn anything in school. You learn all of it on the job, all of it. Everybody learns everything on the job. And one of the things you've got to learn is that your homeowners don't have as much equity as you think they do, right? So I love the agents that do a seller net list, or not seller net listing, a seller net sheet. Mm-hmm. So they go to the seller and they go, your house is vacant right now. I know you want to sell it. You've moved across 15 states over and you want me to sell this house. Great. You currently owe 370. You want to sell it for 400 after my commissions, after the agent's commissions, after closing costs, after potential concessions. And more importantly, after 5 months of payments and utilities and taxes and insurance, you're going to walk away with a negative $22,000 for me to list this property. Do you know how many sellers would actually hire that agent? None. So what agents do is they don't bring that up. They just go, yeah, I can sell. I'm a top producer. I'm $1 billion producer. I can sell this house. Okay. So what happens is at the end of that listing, they have not garnered an offer that would actually allow the seller to walk away with no money out of pocket or no, check covering the lack of equity. And so what my team does is we just call the expired listings. I try not to go around agents. I love working with agents that are educated. This is kind of a typical deal. I'll kind of tell you why this happens, okay? Typical deal is I see a house on the MLS. It's been listed for 100 days. By the way, guys, I can go on, there's software that tells me what their mortgage amount is, when they bought, how much money they put down, what their rate is. I can look up their promise. I can look up their note and deed of trust from the bank. I can look up their mortgage. It's all public information, okay? So I can see that these homes that are on the MLS over 100 days, that's our starting point. We start out by saying, what houses are on the market for over 100 days? That indicates pain for me. A lot of agents, they don't want to be bothered about subject to or seller finance in the first 30 days because they're still intoxicated with the belief that they're going to sell this house in those first 30 days. But 100 days passes and now they're rounding second base on their listing agreement. They only got another 80 days to go until that listing agreement expires. Now the agents are open to a conversation. So I don't even start calling agents until 100 days in. So we call the agent. Hey, we can see your homeowner bought the property with an FHA loan, put no money down, and you're trying to sell the house for roughly what they owe. I imagine the seller is probably going to have to write a check to cover your commissions, this, that, and the other, and they're going to walk away in a negative position. I want to throw an offer at you. This is a little bit out of left field. I would like to offer to take over the seller's payments and pay your commissions out of my pocket as the buyer so that your seller doesn't walk away losing money. Agents, 90% of the time say, nope, my seller's not interested in that. We've come to learn after years of experience that that's not what they're really saying. What they're saying is, I'm embarrassed to let you know that nobody taught me what that meant. And I don't know how to pitch that to my seller. And I don't know how to tell you that I'm not educated as a licensed professional. Okay. So they just say my seller's not interested. So we call back on 120 days, call back on 140 days, call back on 160. And then we call back the day before we know their listing expires, 178, 79 days. This is your last chance. We'll pay your commissions. Okay. Still 90% of agents will go all the way through that cycle and say no every single time. Now, no's for me, this is for the audience. A no for me is just another breadcrumb on the path to success. It's leading me exactly where I want to go. I know that those no's are just breadcrumbs. Okay. So what do? Well, 10% of those deals we've worked out with the agent. The agent gets paid their commission. There's no buyer's agent in this situation because I'm the buyer. And I let the seller walk away with not writing a check out of their pocket. Or sometimes we'll give the seller $5,000 or $10,000 or something along those lines. Why would the seller do that? Because they were going to write a check to sell their house. Money. The reason why somebody will sell to you on subject to is money. That is it. Now, the 181st day comes around, my team knows, what do? We're calling sellers directly now because we're not going around agents. Agents have now been fired. And we utilize what we call the common enemy strategy. Who's the common enemy? The common enemy at this point is now the agent. Okay. So I work with agents. I give you chances for 80 days on these transactions. I want to work with you. I want to educate you. And this is what we do. We then go back to the home. We go to the homeowner for the first time. We say, hey, my name is Pace. I spoke to your agent 4 or 5 times, just wondering, what was it that kept you from saying yes to our offer? And the seller says, what was your, I don't know. Which offer were you? Like I said, we were the ones that were going to let you walk away from the house and we would take over the payments and pay the commissions. And the seller goes, you guys would do that? We sure would. Did your agent not bring that up to you? No, the agent never brought that up to us one time. So here's what we do. We get them under contract. We buy their house subject to. I could do one of 2 or multiple different things, but it's usually one or of 2 things. I'm either A, going to wholesale that to another buyer, right? And just make a $10,000 or $20,000 assignment fee. Typically, that's not what I do anymore because I've scaled and now I want properties in my portfolio. Or B, I just buy them, put them in my portfolio, rent them out, Airbnb, midterm rental, sober living, whatever the exit strategy needs to be for the neighborhood and the area, blah, blah, blah. And I then call the agent after I've recorded at county public records and after I've got a title insurance policy and after I've gone through the title company or the closing attorney, depending on the state. And I call the agent and I send them a text message with the PDF of my closing documents. And I say, hey, we closed the transaction. I would have loved to see you at the closing table and written you a check for $9,000 for your commissions, but the seller apparently wasn't interested. Would you like to work with me in the future on future listings so I can show you how to do this? So my job is always respect the agent until they ask me not to. I then go get the deal. 90% of my deals come from expired listings. And then I call the agents back up and I try and enlist them in my army of agents that actually are educated in this process.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great process.
That is a wonderful process. And when you know something so well and you can line it out step by step by step, it makes it appear super easy. So now the questions that I have, all right, well, are you only looking for those people that are super motivated, down to their last chance, don't want to pay the $20,000? Are you facing any objections from those sellers, and how are you overcoming those objections? Like, for example, well, if I'm trying to buy a new house someplace else, the mortgage, I'm still responsible for the mortgage. That hurts me. Are you overcoming those objections, or it just is what it is? Great series of questions. Got about 7 questions in there. So let me unpackage those. Number 1, am I only going after sellers that are down and out and they have no other option? The answer is no, but those are a lot easier. Sure. Right? I'm not going to go to my next door neighbor and say, hey, would you like to sell your house to me? There's no indication of pain, right?
You show me a real estate investor that's struggling to buy deals, and I'll show you a real estate investor that's calling everybody and anybody willy-nilly. Yeah. Guys, the first step for everybody listening, the first step of being a successful real estate investor is only working with people who have motivation, right? Mm-hmm. It's like trying to ask a woman on a date who's already married. Like, why would I do that?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go ask women who are lonely and not married and not in a relationship already if they'd like to go to dinner with me, right? So once you're in this business long enough, the question of do you only ask single women out on dates seems like a weird question.
Right.
But when you're brand new, it's something you got to learn. The answer is yes. I only go after single women if I'm asking people on a date, right? I'm only going after motivated people to do whatever business with me that I'm looking for, whether I'm an insurance salesperson, a car salesperson. I'm probably not. Think about this. If I sell cars for a living, should I be calling the owner of another car dealership and saying, boy, do I have a deal for you? No. Homeboy owns a car dealership. There's literally no motivation there for him to buy another car from you. Think about where the motivation comes from and target people in motivation. Where's high motivation? Foreclosure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Foreclosure is a big one. Bankruptcy, divorce, lack of equity. Now that's subject to, that's me taking over existing payments and seller is really not getting anything. There's another set of motivation, right? I would call this motivation pain, right? That's subject to. So subject to is typically painful situations. Seller finance, where the houses are paid off, those are what I call gain, pain and gain. Sellers that sell to me on seller finance are just greedy sons of guns. And I love it. They just want a really high purchase price. They're not willing to negotiate. And they're also very savvy. They're the opposite of the sub 2 seller. And I'll get into some of your other questions in a second. The seller on a seller finance deal understands they're going to get more money on a seller finance deal. Plain and simple. They're going to sell faster on seller finance. Plain and simple. Okay. They're going to make more money long-term on seller finance because now they can, as the bank, they can charge the borrower, the new owner, interest on the higher purchase price. So now the most important thing is they can also mitigate the majority of their capital gains taxes by selling to me on seller finance. The question I have when I now understand creative finance at the level I do is why in the hell would anybody sell on cash? Why? When you understand creative finance, you get to a point where I have no idea why you would sell in any other situation besides creative finance, because you're going to get more money long-term and get tax savings. Oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. So again, sellers with high equity, right? Like the RV park we just bought. I bought 2 RV parks, same owner in Kalispell, Montana. We're closing on October 15th. Great story. Listed with a broker. Broker gets fired. Why? Because the broker couldn't get the unrealistic number that the seller put out. And I feel bad for the brokers that take on those listings, but that's their job. Their job is take on listings, right? Otherwise, their office is like, yo, Tom, homeboy, you haven't gotten a listing in a bit, dude. Like, what's going on? So they go and take unrealistic sellers with unrealistic sales prices on as a listing to ultimately get fired. Guys, do the research on expired listings. It's insane how many agents get fired. Agent doesn't know how to have that conversation about creative finance to that seller, so the seller ends up firing him. We call the RV park owner and go, would you sell in seller finance? He goes, why would I do that? And I go, because I'll give you your asking price. We don't have to pay any commissions out to agents. I can close in a week, and it looks like you bought the property for $5 million, want to sell it for $7 million. You're going to have a $2 million taxable event at 40%. You're going to pay $800,000 in capital gains tax. So I'm going to give you 800,000 reasons why you should sell to me on seller finance. And the seller goes, really? That's a thing? I go, yeah. So we're closing on October 15th, which is in a couple of weeks. So pain and gain, right? So I'm only going after people in pain on subject to and people they want gain in seller finance. So there's the first question. Yes, I only go after motivated sellers in whatever category I can find. Now, your other questions are, what about objections? I'm so good at objections that I bring them up in the conversation. I go, can I tell you the questions you're not asking me? Because only brokers and real estate agents know what the due on sale clause is. Homeowners have no clue. No clue. And to be honest, most brokers and real estate agents don't know what the due on sale clause truly is. Okay. It's a judicial foreclosure.
Right.
It means the due on sale clause is one of those top 5 objections. I'll go through those really quickly, but I'd say the number one objection a seller is going to have is what happens if blank, right? And that blank, it can be filled in with a majority of like a bunch of things, but majority of the time it is what happens if you don't make the payments. Okay. What happens if I don't make the payments? Well, let's talk about a sub 2 seller. Well, first and foremost, if I don't make the payments, you get the house back. And not only that, whatever money I gave you and whatever money I put into the property and whatever tenant that's been cash flowing and payments I've made to you along the way in whether sub 2 or seller finance, you get to keep all of that. And sellers get to a point where they understand that so well that a lot of my sellers will go, wait, so like, I kind of hope you default. I go, well, please don't be like that to me. Don't pray evil things to happen to me so I can default. But that is truly the answer. The answer is you get the house back. Well, how? Well, we can do it a variety of ways. I can do what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So I can sign over a deed in lieu, just saying, you don't have to foreclose on me. Here's the deed back. You could also go through a foreclosure if I wanted to be a jerk, but why don't we just put an agreement in the deed called a performance deed that says if I don't perform, you can get the deed recorded back in your name without a judicial foreclosure. Pretty simple. Sellers go, damn, that's a thing. I go, yeah, it's a thing. Okay. Then that's objection number 1. And I usually, sellers go, well, what happens if you don't make payments? I go, let's pretend that I get abducted by an alien. Because first and foremost, why would I not make the payment? I'm buying this property because it's a prudent investment based on cash flow. If I really cared about the value of the property, by the way, I wouldn't be buying this house because it's at full retail, right? I'm not getting a deal on the house. I'm actually not even buying your house in my mind. I'm buying your interest rate. That's what I want. I want your interest rate. Why would I let this interest rate go? Let's think about the logic here. Give me an example of why I wouldn't make the payment. Give me an example. And they can't.
Yeah.
And if they really push hard on me, I go, let me show you the mathematics behind what I'm going to do and how I'm going to make money. Now, I don't really ever have to go there, probably once out of 100 conversations, but sometimes you'll get a really analytical person that works at Motorola, that everything in their mind is all about microchips and give me the spreadsheets and the facts. You'll get the analytical person that comes in, well, how are you making money? I go, well, your payment is $1,700. I'm going to take that payment over. Okay. I've got a rent rate. Rentometer tells me I can rent it out for $2,200. So I've got a $500 spread. After I put $300 to the side for budget and management, I net $200 a month on your property, but actually don't even care about the $200. What I care about is the future appreciation, the future pay down of the debt paid by the tenant. And the most important thing I care about is the fact that I'm going to depreciate this asset against my active income and pay no money in taxes this year. And you get sellers then go, can I learn more about this after I sell my house to you subject to? And then they go on my YouTube channel and they send me messages like, oh my gosh, this is genius. Oh my gosh. So that's objection number 1. Objection number 2 is due on sale clause. And the way I overcome the due on sale clause is first, I bring it up before anybody else can. And 2, I tell them stories. I've had the due on sale clause called on me now 7 times, twice just last month, 5 times in the prior 9 years. The due on sale clause does happen, but think about how many transactions I've done. Now, what is the worst thing that happens in a due on sale clause? Do either one of you guys know?
The bank has to go into foreclosure and they give you the opportunity to pay it off.
Yes. Okay. So the bank sends you a letter. Great answer, JD. Bank sends you a letter, says, we intend to send you into a judicial foreclosure to take the property back. Okay. 9 out of 10 times we call the bank. We go, yo, dude, your seller was in foreclosure. We caught up their arrears. It's now in good standing. We bought the property subject to. They go, oh, and they let us just keep the house. Not a problem. 10% of the time, they're like, we don't care. This is against policy and we want the property paid off. Okay, cool. So what do? This is now where creative finance gets challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's called an executory contract. All 50 states have them. I'm in Arizona. We call them agreements for sale. Other states call them land contracts, contract for deeds, bond for deeds, installment contracts. There's 1,000 different ways they're called depending on what state you're in. But essentially what an executory contract is a way for me to buy a property, control the asset, but the deed stays in the seller's name, therefore not triggering the due on sale clause. So if I do get the due on sale clause called on me, I call up the seller and I go, hey, you know that due on sale clause I told you about that might happen? Well, it just happened. So I need to deed the property back over to you and we need to have a new agreement. And by the way, in my previous agreement, I said I'd pay you $500 for the headache. So once we're all done, I'll wire you that $500. Let's redo the paperwork. And you restructure it as an executory contract instead of a subject to deal.
Awesome.
I have literally never seen somebody lose a house to a due on sale clause. Never happened. I've never seen it happen.
I heard about a guy one time who knew somebody's brother who had it done and it ruined his life. That's every story. I think there's one guy in all of America and everybody is 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon to that one person.
Yeah. And I always ask, I go, give me an example, show me a real story and I'll tell you an idiot that didn't know what an executory contract is. And by the way, executory contracts, you not knowing about them doesn't mean you're not an idiot or you're an idiot. But they do teach all of 50 states in continued education for real estate agents. Your executory contract is called something different in every state. So I would look it up. If you're listening to this and you're an agent, go ask your broker, go ask the real estate commission in your local area. What is our version of an executory contract? In Arizona, it's an agreement for sale. Louisiana, agreement for sale. California, land contract. Florida, contract for deed. Most states are called a contract for deed or land contract. Some are called different things, but it's the same thing. It's controlling an asset, controlling real estate. So I can be the owner because I control it, but the deed stays in the seller's name. And what I do with the deed, it is a physical document, by the way, for people listening. A deed is a physical document. We have the seller sign off on the deed and we put it in a safety deposit box so I have control of the deed, even though it hasn't been recorded at public record.
Sure. Yeah, that's perfect. That's great. And I think a lot of people, they need to know every step A through Z on how to do all of this stuff. But if you just play the ball as it's hit to you, you're going to be able to overcome that. You don't need to worry about the contract for deed in Florida if you're not doing the first steps first. If you're not marketing to the sellers, if you're not putting them under contract, if you're not taking those steps and doing those things as you go, that'll never be a problem for you. So
really good example. I mean, you see so many people, I go to real estate seminars, I get DMs, I get YouTube comments. People are like, how do I get started? And then the next question they ask is, what about the due on sale clause? I'm like, bro, you have never even negotiated you've never even had a conversation with an agent or a seller, and you're asking me about the due on sale clause? Like, talk about getting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are brand new, you're telling them, start your regular marketing, start looking at expired listings, start creating a business. And are we just putting the the creative finance on our tool belt to use in the course of our regular scope, or should these people be making creative finance the only thing that they're looking at?
Oh, great question. Okay, so I think sub-2 and creative finance should be the second thing you look at on every deal. So start with cash. So even in my business, so first question, how do I get started? You're asking, well, should these people go start a business? It depends on who you are, right? If somebody's listening, he's like, I've literally never done anything. I'm interested in this. Well, guess what, guys? There's wholesalers out there and agents that will help you find a sub-2 or seller finance deal that you could just buy from them. Mm-hmm. And you could bring in some private money to cover your costs to get into the deal. I would start there. Then that way you don't need a team. You don't have to worry about cold calling and finding these deals. Go find the people that are already finding them. So where can you find them? I have a free Facebook group. We have about 125,000 members in it. United States only. Those 125,000 members have learned creative finance from a basic standpoint from me. These are not my students. It's just a free Facebook group that I pour into like 2-3 hours a week. I'd probably say on average, there's 50 to 70 deals posted in there every 6 hours. Okay. So if you want a deal right now, there's people that already have these deals under contract. You can just go, I want that deal. Reach out to me. They've already negotiated the terms with the seller, the agent, all the things. Then you need private money. That's another question. The question is, how do I get private money? Go to my YouTube channel, say, how do I get private money? There's a training there. That would be the easiest way for me to get one of these deals is I don't have to negotiate, cold call, wonder where the list is. How do I follow up? What do I say to their objections? Like there's people out there called wholesalers that have already done that work. They've already done the training and they just want to get a finder's fee. Okay. I would start there. Second thing is if you are going to go out and start doing this on your own, I would always start with cash offers first. Why? Because it goes back to the common enemy strategy. If I call a homeowner and I say, hey, homeowner, I see you're in foreclosure. Catch me up to speed. That's always my number one question. Catch me up to speed. And I shut up and I let them talk. Homeowner tells me, all the lies. Cause this is my most famous saying. My famous saying, and people have this written on t-shirts. Buyers are liars. Sellers are worse. Okay. Sellers are the biggest liars you'll ever meet. Grandma Smith, 91 years old, the lady you would assume would never lie to you, has only had 91 years to master the art of lying to you. Okay. They are the greatest liars. And one of the things they lie about is that they're not talking to anybody else. Okay. You have to assume they're talking to 25, 35 other people. So the question I always ask is, so let's kind of show you how I pitch this. Find a foreclosure list. You can go to Pre-Foreclosures Daily, PropStream, Batch Leads. There's 1,000 websites that sell foreclosure data. And if you're an agent, you can get foreclosure data for free from your title company. They'll just give it to you every week, okay? Call a foreclosure. Hey, see you're in foreclosure? How can I help? Catch me up to speed. What's going on? And they yammer on, tell you all the problems. Okay, cool. What are all the other investors telling you? Is the number one question I ask once I understand their situation. They go, oh, dang it. He knows I'm talking to other people. I don't ask the question, hey, don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to, guys. Okay. So like think about if I'm going to a girl and I'm going to ask her out on a date, going back to that reference. I don't know why this became a thing on this podcast, but it now has become a thing. So if I go to a girl and I'm asking her on a date, first thing I'm going to look for is, are you married? Do you have a ring on your finger? This is why we wear a ring on our fingers. What is the version of married in real estate? Is you have a listing agreement with an agent. You and the agent are married. I'm not going to go around the agent, right? Okay, they're not listed, okay? Or they're not engaged. What do? Do I want to ask the seller, are you talking to anybody else? Is like asking a girl, are you dating anybody else? Bro, don't ask the questions you don't want to know the answer to. The girl's going to say, no, you're the only person I'm talking to. The question you want to ask is, how or what are those other investors saying to you? You want to assume that the girl is dating other people. You want to assume the seller is talking to other people. It's happening. They're humans. They're going to be talking to other people. Now, common enemy. They're going to say, well, I've had 15 investors stop by, get all this direct mail, these cold calls. I go, yeah, man, those freaking knuckleheads, even though I'm one of them. Those knuckleheads. But what kind of numbers are they throwing out at you? Well, one person gave me 141, but there's no way I can get that deal work. Well, why? Tell me why doesn't 141 work? So I'm using my cash conversation as a way to garner ammunition to ultimately then lead them to creative finance if I can't get a cash deal done. Mm-hmm. If I go directly to creative and I don't understand all the other people that they're talking to and all the pain that they've had with talking to other investors, I'm going to really sell myself short when it comes time to really needing ammunition. And so let's say a seller says, well, yeah, I got an offer at 141, one at 132, but I owe 170 and I'm $10,000 behind on my payments and I need money to go somewhere else. I need $5,000. I'm like, you just gave me the layup deal of the century. Okay. What did you just tell me? You told me you have no equity. Nobody can even offer anywhere near what you owe, let alone what you're behind on, and you need $5,000 in your pocket. Wholesalers are out of the question. No wholesaler, agent, or anybody's going to be able to help the seller. So I go, oh, well, it sounds like you're in a tough bind. To be honest with you, I probably would be offering somewhere around the same number, 140 to 142. However, I do have a different strategy. You probably haven't heard of it before, but what if I just took over your payments and gave you $5,000? And the seller's like, wait, what? Huh? You would do that? Yeah, I could do that. Well, what about my late payments? I go, don't worry about that. I have investors. They'll come in. I'll have a private money lender. They'll bring in the 10,000. They'll bring in your 5,000. They'll pay for the closing costs. And I'll turn around and turn this into a rental. But what if I could do that? I'm not saying I can, but what if I could? Is that something that you would entertain? So always, always, always start with cash and then pivot to creative once you get all the bullets that you need to utilize later.
Yeah, that's great.
You see why you should never do a 20-minute podcast with me?
Yeah, well, this is such a hot topic right now, and I'm not sure if it's because there's courses out there that are pushing this really hard right now, but this isn't some new strategy. You've been doing it for 9 years or longer. This is
I learned from my title rep who had been doing it for 41 years before I came on the scene, right? Eileen Brown. I talk about it in my book. Eileen Brown had been doing this stuff for 41 years. And she said she learned it from a lady who had been doing it for 50 years. So it's been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. Why is it so popular now? Well, one, interest rates have gone up. People really don't have any other choice. But I launched my education well before any of this stuff happened. Right. And we were the largest real estate group, still to this day, largest real estate group in education on the planet. We are the largest. And the reason being is because it's a strategy that's been around a long time. Whether the interest rates are up or down, I've been buying houses subject to and seller finance since the beginning of my investment strategy. It doesn't matter what the market's doing. There's always expired listings. There's always people with lack of equity. There's always people in foreclosure. There's always people getting divorced. So people are all talking about, like, the Fed chair yesterday just had a whole thing saying they're going to pause interest rates hikes for September, but get ready for November. And people are, oh my gosh. I'm like, guys, just use creative finance and stop having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the last objection that I really hope you can help me cover comes mostly from agents, and usually from agents who've been an agent for 30 plus years, is, hey, that's illegal. You can't do it.
Interesting. First and foremost, you've had 30 years to learn that it's not legal, that it's not illegal. When somebody says it's not legal, here's what I hear, because I have a trained ear now. Mm-hmm. I've never taken the time to ask an attorney. I've never taken the time to hire or go to the Attorney General's office. I've never taken the time to go to the people who wrote the Dodd-Frank Act. I've never taken the time to go to a course or learn these things. What I'd rather do is just be a lazy son of a gun and just tell people what I don't understand must be illegal. So I actually did an agent class 6 months ago where I brought in like 200 agents into my office. I brought in my attorney from North and South Carolina. He's my closing attorney, Harry Marsh. I brought in Sean St. Clair, my contract attorney of Arizona. I brought in a gentleman that helped write the Dodd-Frank Act. I brought in somebody that used to work for HUD. I brought in the Attorney General of Utah and the Attorney General of California. We did a 6-hour class all around all 50 states. This is legal. And if your broker is not allowing you to do it, then fire your broker and stop being dumb and go to a broker that actually understands real estate investing. And it was 6 hours. And people that watch that class, it's a free class. I give it away. And people walk out of that going, oh my gosh, I was 100% wrong. Let me show you a couple of things. Okay. If I can do a screen share for people that are watching this, let me give you a little screen share. I'll go through the sub 2 legalities, a little sheet I just put together a couple weeks ago. Okay. So you gave me sharing capabilities. Let me pull this up. If sub 2 was illegal, you tell me, do you think the IRS would have a publication called Publication P537 talking about how to do a sub 2 deal on your taxes? Do you think that the HUD settlement statement would have a line item called existing loans taken subject to. It's actually a line item on the HUD settlement statement. What about the HUD 1? Okay, this is a Code of Federal Regulation document, page 396. Boom. What about Fannie Mae talking about waiving the due on sale clause? Interesting. What about all the IRS documents going back and forth and all the real estate? Look at all these links. I could go on and on and on. All these federal websites talking about how to properly structure a sub-2 deal and how to overcome the due on sale clause. I have a list of all this stuff I just started putting together. It took me about 15 minutes to throw this together. My attorney has another list even longer that he hands out. I would just say that if you've been in real estate for 30 years, shame on you.
Yeah.
If you've been in real estate for 5 years, here's what I respect. The older you get, the more you should realize you actually don't know much. I feel like that all the time.
Yeah.
Even though I feel like I have a really good grasp on creative finance and a really good grasp on real estate, oh my gosh, there is so much more to learn. And the more I learn, the more I realize there is to learn. So when a real estate agent, typically somebody from Coldwell Banker, they come to me with their fancy little gold lapel badge and they go, I've been a realtor for 30 years. They're always fancy. And I've never seen anything like this. And my answer to them is, well, let a guy who's never been licensed teach you how to do it the right way. They get bothered by it. They get upset by it, but I'm not an agent. I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to make my money whether you want to make some money with me or not. And I'm going to make money with licensed real estate agents whether you participate or not. So you can keep going down that path of feast or famine, depending on what the Fed is doing, or you can actually get fed yourself by feeding yourself education that will actually help feed your family.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of training, and we could literally take this conversation for 4 more hours, but
easy.
I know that you have a ton of hours of training and interviews and all kinds of good stuff on your YouTube channel. Would you mind sharing the YouTube channel and then letting our guys know where they could find out more about you and the kind of stuff you got going on?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel. We have about 300,000 subscribers, I think, somewhere around there. We get about 7 million views a month. And we are the #1 YouTube channel, not just about real estate creative finance, but also business buying creative finance and cars and vehicles and airplanes. Everything you can imagine, we've bought with creative finance, whether it's seller finance or simply taking over people's payments via subject to. That YouTube channel, I upload 6 videos a week. I relentlessly give value. Why? Because I want to do business with you. I want you to send me deals. I want to partner with you on deals. In fact, the RV park I'm closing on in a couple of weeks came from a gentleman named Jordan Reyes, who started out by watching my YouTube channel. So when people say, why do you give this all for free? Because if I give it to you and I teach you how to fish, you're going to bring me those fish and we can feast on it for dinner. So my YouTube channel is pretty amazing. It's only going to get better and better and better as we buy more businesses and we buy more things with creative finance. But start there and just go to YouTube and type in Pace Morby subject to. And I've got videos that are like 3 hours long where I literally walk through individual deals with addresses, settlement statements, give real numbers, whiteboard it out for the visual people. And I just posted one a couple of weeks ago. 2 months ago. It's like got 150,000 views. And it's literally just a whiteboard video of me saying, here's a full sub-2 deal walkthrough. And the comments are like 800, 900 comments. Like, I can't believe I didn't know this existed. So start there.
Awesome. Well, Pace, we really appreciate you taking the time to break some of this stuff down for us. I'm sure we got a ton of value. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate you so much.
I'm sorry, guys. I just, I'm passionate about this, so I go on long. And when you guys said 20 minutes, I was like, y'all better be like strapped in for like maybe a 5-part series. So if you guys ever want me to come back and talk about one topic only, we could talk about lease options. We could talk about wraps. We could talk about novation agreements. We could talk about where do these deals come from? What's the follow-up process? We could talk about how do you manage your portfolio? What kind of money do these properties make? Now I know that subject to is a thing, but how much money can I make from this? Whatever the topic you want me to deep dive in, I'm happy to do a part 2, part 3, or whatever.
Yes, that would be fabulous.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.